In a world that reacts faster than it thinks, the leaders who stand out aren't necessarily the loudest voices. They're the ones who lead the conversation with clarity, with curiosity, and with intention. What I've been seeing across the event and technology landscape is a shift away from experimentation and toward responsibility. Not more tools, not faster output, but better systems for decision making. And that's the backdrop for today's conversation. Today's guest has spent a lifetime helping people find their voice, shape meaningful conversations, and stay human in a fast changing environment. You're listening to Events Demystified podcast, and this is the CEO edition. Welcome to the Events Demystified podcast, the CEO edition. Welcome back to Events Demystified podcast. This is Anka Platon Fun, and I'm super excited to have this conversation today because I'm coming into today's episode from a user conference where the most advanced conversations, surprisingly, weren't about AI features and technology or content generation. They were about systems, orchestration, decision compression, and what happens when complexity outgrows human capacity. The questions that were asked wasn't what AI should I use or what is AI, what used to be just last year, but how do we integrate intelligence without breaking operations, and how do we reduce cognitive overload for teams, and how do we design systems that support humans instead of exhausting them. That's the lens I'm bringing to the conversation. And today's guest is Dennis Meador, CEO and founder of the Legal Podcast Network. Dennis has been an entrepreneur since his teenage years, from early hustle to digital marketing, from years as a pastor to guiding attorneys and professionals as they learn to communicate with clarity and confidence. Across every chapter of his career, one theme has remained constant: conversations that shape thinking, not just the messaging. In a moment where the AI is accelerating how stories are created and distributed, and there's more AI slop that we know what to do with it, leadership is less about output and more about coherence and presence. That's why this conversation today truly matters. And without further ado, let's welcome our guest in.
This episode is brought to you by True Fan Events Production. Learn more at truefanevents.com.
Dennis, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Very good. I appreciate the opportunity to jump on, talk about the transition of what's happening with leadership. I'm really excited to talk about this because this is something that I have really been talking about for a few years now. And really, what you're saying dovetails into a lot of things I talk about, which is founder-led marketing and really the humanization of leadership that has become so crucial. And like you said, it's not about better systems. It's not about a better AI. It's about jumping out from behind the logo and actually being real people, communicating with our audience, and putting ourselves in a position where people want to work with us embodied as a company behind us. I'm excited to talk about that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Before we dive in, I would love for our listeners to hear a little bit about you, your journey this far. Tell us who you are, what you do, what led you to build the Legal Podcast Network. Then we're going to dive into the meat of the conversation.
At a young age, I was put in a position where I needed to pay attention to what was going on around me financially, take care of myself, my sister, sometimes even my mother. And that built some skill sets that maybe some people don't cultivate well into their 20s, being mindful of money, the power it has, and how to make it happen. And so 14 kind of started my first business where I went beyond just the work I was doing and started leveraging others around me to have success. Sometimes in my teens, I was making more than my parents put together. It jump started me into that. In my early 20s, I went from marketing into digital marketing. When I got into digital marketing, I actually got into working with attorneys, personal injury attorneys. They were one of the first to move online in the early to mid 2000s. And so working with them helped me realize that there was a personality fit. In the past, I had sold to body shops and to restaurants and to anybody that would buy an ad on whatever I was selling. And then I entered this new arena with digital, and I went from asking a few $100s to a few $1,000s. And then I started talking to people. If I said, what do you think about this? Or I hear your no, but have you considered that? It went from yelling and screaming, you don't know what you're talking about, huh? And I really like that, like having conversations that were based on logic, based
Mhm.
on that we could actually converse back and forth. Having two different point of views didn't necessarily mean that the conversation was immediately over. Throughout my career, I've had different agencies, mostly flourishing on the social media side of things, but I've done SEO, website building, overall branding, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. A lot of it just really, oh, I'm in marketing. I enjoy this. Could I do that? And then I build some websites and be like, wow, I just sat down. This is like early 2010s. I'd be like, I just sat down for 5 hours, made a website and made 7 grand. Maybe that's not a bad thing to do once or twice a week. Just getting throughout my career, but always going back to that attorney relationship.
Mhm.
So December of 23, I was a partner, or in November of 23, I was a partner in a SEO firm that worked with lawyers. And I was on a 5-year agreement with my partner. He basically exercised his buyout, which he had every right to do. And so I dug into my book of ideas. I'm always of the mind that you should be ready to go at a moment's notice. If your entire industry collapses, you
Mm,
should have a backup plan. Just try to be prepared for whatever
yeah.
happens in life. I started the Legal Podcast Network, and May 1st of 24, we officially launched. Now here we are 19, 20 months later. Went from myself, my VA who I'd had for a few years, and an individual who'd done some contract work for me. Now we have about 70 people on the team, over 200 clients that we work with, and it's just taken off and blossomed. What we've really focused on is what we call authoritative positioning, helping attorneys understand that the thing that they brag about happening in their office, if I could just get them across the desk for me, then I would win them as a client, is no longer an everyday event. So we have to recreate that event for them to put them in a position to differentiate themselves and win business, not based on having the lowest rate, but on having the highest amount of trust from somebody looking to work with someone like them.
There's something to be said about changing your audience, and the entire offer and communication pathways change altogether. I remember doing a major conference a few years back. It was in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It was all very much geared towards lawyers, but very high-end lawyers.
They had to
Yes,
widen the doors so their egos could make it in.
pretty
Yeah, I work with.
much, very much. And we had a lot of great content, a lot of big speakers, think David Goggins, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kevin O'Reilly. So that whole audience, the whole purpose for that conference was to teach them how to get better at their presence. Their video presence, their media presence, how to create better content. To me, that was mind blowing because you put so much money and effort into something that we innately learn how to do because we know we have to put ourselves out there. Now, there's many levels, especially when you are a person of that caliber, because there's a lot of liability involved when you get on the mic, what you say and what you present, and the boundaries we have to stay within, right? All of that takes a lot of training and knowledge. It was interesting to hear that this was the audience that you really found your place in. It makes sense to me. But coming back to our podcast, and because this is the CEO edition, I want to ask you something that I have asked some of our other guests. I remember someone saying something that resonated with me: lead the conversation, not the reaction. So, from your perspective, what does being a CEO mean to you today, especially in an environment where we have systems, tools, expectations that are also evolving at a speed that sometimes is very hard for people to naturally adapt to?
I think that leadership in today's age has turned from this authoritative, top down. Millennials certainly didn't. Gen X, where I'm at, we barely put up with that. Millennials didn't put up with it. Gen Z ain't putting up with it at all. And Gen Alpha, by the time they get into the workplace, they're going to take over the company for you trying to act that way. So I think we're coming into a different age of leadership and respect. We used to respect people that we could place on a pedestal. Look at how much money they make. Look at where they went to school. Look at how big their company, look at all that they've done. And we used to put people on a pedestal, but people have lost respect for that a long time ago. It's mainly because we've seen so many fall off that pedestal. That guy that was up there at the top of the pedestal in society is now, you could name all kinds of news in the world, but let's just say they've fallen off those pedestals in front
Yeah.
of our eyes over and over again. So what being a CEO means to me now is, number one, it's empowering others. If you can find a way to empower and excite people in a shared vision to do something together, then you're going to be an infinitely better CEO than the one who intimidates, who scares, who threatens. That kind of CEO is really a dinosaur from a bygone era. The new CEO is one who empowers, finds a shared vision with the people he works with, whether it's at scale or individual. I have 8 directors on my team. And one of the things that I do when I can spot them pretty quickly that they're due for leadership is I sit down and I ask them, what are your goals? What are your financial goals? Is this a stepping stone for you? I'm okay with that. As long as we all know, hey, I'm going to be here 2-3 years, get this experience under my belt and move on to the next thing. As long as we all know it, I'm not going to let somebody go for that. Finding their vision for their life and seeing, does what you want align with what I'm trying to accomplish at the head of this company? And if so, how can we make sure that those things fall together in the best way possible for both of us? So I feel that's really the 2 main things for leadership today to be looking for. How do I empower and how do I align?
I love that. So that's, I'm sure, has been informed over years of working with people. And I'm curious from the perspective of an early experience, right? Because you did talk about being a pastor,
Yes.
and then now you're an entrepreneur and you're also traveling, you're a nomad. There's so much substance to who you are. I'm curious, what taught you the power of conversation, of communication? Maybe an early lesson or challenge? Do you
Oh,
have
yeah.
anything you can share?
Being a quote unquote early bloomer, I was a pastor at 18, pastoring men who are my age now with teenagers and 20 somethings. I
An
was a pastor
pastor.
of a church, a
Oh,
couple of
wow.
churches. I was a youth pastor at 16 in a
Yeah.
bigger church, and I did all the speaking. There was a
Mhm.
guy who ran the youth group, but I did most of the teaching. When I went off to Bible college, there was this little old country church that was a little farther than the older guys wanted to drive and paying a little less than they were willing to take. And I was like, I'll go. I've been speaking for 2 or 3 years now. I'll just go down there and this will let me practice preaching and doing all of
Yeah.
that. So I went down there for a couple of weeks. From the very beginning, I've had this philosophy about
Mhm.
speaking and teaching. And it's a very simple philosophy, but I found not a lot of people follow it. If no one's learning, I'm not teaching. If no one's following, I'm not leading. So instead of approaching things from the way I think they should be, I've always tried to approach things as the way they are so that I can transition them to go after that thing. So, for example, there are about 3 or 4 families in this church, about 15, 20 people. And I drive down there and they're just paying basically my gas money, feeding me in the afternoon, staying that night, and then driving back. So after I went down there 2 or 3 weeks, they literally said, okay, we don't want anybody else to come. We want you to come. Would you sit down and pastor our church? And so I sat down
That
with
is
them and I,
pretty crazy, though, considering that you were so young. I grew up in a very traditional church environment. My dad was a pastor to many churches. He even had a gypsy church at one point, and I
okay,
would always go with him. He was also this evangelist, right? So he was traveling a lot, and I would be the entertainment. So I get that, but I also get the church culture, how hard it is for someone new to step in with authority and be followed. There's so much politics, especially in a church system. So I'm
well,
curious how that actually play out for you.
in the group of churches that I was in, and let me say this, I'm the oldest of 6 kids. I ran my own business from 14. I was like, I guess I got to get a real job. I got a job at a Burger King, and within 2 months, I was the highest supervisor you could be without being on salary. So there is an innate leadership ability that has become evident to me throughout time. But the group of churches I was in was more concerned with what they perceived to be called by God. So if you're called by God, because you're studying the Bible, Josiah was 8 years old when he ruled
Right.
Israel. But
Check it
but
out. It's made by the people that have produced chosen.
I was excited. I knew my stuff. I would study. I was focused. And they felt like they came away either inspired or learning something. And
So
to
you got
them, it
their
was like,
blessings.
they were like, this young man is anointed. I went in, we had 3 or 4 families, and I just went to work. Within a few months, we went from 15, 20 people in services to 80, 90, 100, 120. I think we got almost 200 people in that little church, bringing them in out of the hills. You got to come see this crazy kid that's up in front of everybody. He seems to be inspiring, or I don't know what they said behind my back. I'm just imagining what I would say in a situation like
Yeah.
that. But even at that age, when I approached these people and they asked me to be their pastor, I tried to lay very clear ground rules. Growing up at church, I'd seen splits and fights and teams and all the stuff. So I just went in and I was like, listen, I'm willing to come. This is what I'm asking. This is how I'm asking you to empower me. This is what you have charge of. I'm not trying to take it over. Let's set clear boundaries. Let's set clear intentions. Let's make sure we want the same thing. If I come, I'm going to come because I want to do all we can to grow this thing and reach more people and do something with it. And they were like, we're with you. We'll do what we've been doing. You do what we need you to do. And together we'll do something good. And we did. And that's been the theme throughout my life, is just me coming into something maybe not qualified on paper. Listen, I graduated high school magna cum laude with a 2.43 GPA, 1,012 out of 1,543.
Because you're too busy building businesses.
And that's true. I had a business, I had a job, and I was pastoring, being a youth speaker in my church. To me, it was a formality. I knew if I didn't have that certificate, it would hold me down later in life. So I also didn't go to college for marketing. I just started doing it when I was in college because I understood promotion and I understood reaching people and I understood all of these things, whether it was innate, whether it was learned through trauma. I don't have the answers to all of that. I just know that I was able to do it. So that's what enabled me throughout my journey. And I've learned the more I'm willing to trust and let go, the better my results are in leadership. A lot of leaders take that once every 3-year outlier event where somebody takes advantage of us and set ourselves up. I'll never get burned like that again. Meanwhile, we're burning 95% of the people that come in contact with us because we don't want to get burned every 3 years for a few $1,000s or a few nights of heartache. And guess what? If you're a leader, you're going to get burned every now and again. You're going to have people take advantage of you. If you lead with compassion, if you lead with empowerment, you will have people that will take advantage of you every now and again. But you have to ask yourself, what's the net positive? I'm 48 years old. I've taken 3 companies from less than $1 million to 3 to 5 million in 1 to 3 years. I've traveled all around the world. I've had great relationships. I've had not so great. I look at my life and I say, the net positive of this sort of mind frame, I would encourage anybody with it.
This episode is brought to you by Tree Fan Events Production. We don't just produce events, we power them with AV, AI, and strategy. From bespoke AV production planning and management to AI workshops, courses, and keynotes, we help teams build smarter events and stronger businesses. Learn more at treefanevents.com.
There's definitely a few parallels there because as you're talking about being the oldest of 6, I'm like the oldest of 10. I grew up in the same culture, same drive. I think it's definitely an innate drive. Maybe the oldest child always has to figure out how they're going to make a way for themselves because their parents are too busy raising the other ones. At least that was me, right? I had my own business, was in radio, working throughout high school and college. And I think, as you said, it's also the conviction. I've seen that in myself as well. You have the conviction that you are capable to do something. And even if you don't know yet how you're going to do it, you're going to figure it out. That conviction, that passion is what draws people in because you're going to do what it takes to make it happen. And I see that young kid that used to be you, right? That was the attitude you walked in with. I'm going to make this work and I'm going to work hard and make it happen. So I love that. How do we teach our kids to more of those skills?
I think we're all still in the learning process on how best to pass down the things we learned through trauma. You grew up, you were there until about what age?
Pretty much right after college. So I was 21 when I left.
You probably got your first job at what, 13, 14 years old?
Oh yeah. I was selling like illegal CDs, selling on the side at 10. I had my little computer that I built myself in 5th grade. You could download and off the internet back then. There's like absolutely no rules around. Oh my gosh, what a Wild West that was. My friends would come to me like, hey, I need a CD with the latest, whatever artist. And this was all Romanian music. I apologize to anyone that I might have harmed with my action as a 10-year-old.
But what I'm saying is we can't impart lessons we learned at 8, 10, 12, 14 to people we protected until they were 22. And I think that's the challenge we're running into. We want better for them, and we assume because they didn't have to go through the trauma. And again, in Romania, it was just the way of life. In America, we get to call it trauma, right?
Yeah.
That's
I
just
had
what
to
it is.
unpack a bunch of that, but only when I was in my 40s did I actually name it what it was. Up until that point, that's growing up.
It's just life. I think that has been the challenge of Gen X with our Gen Z kids. We did all we could to protect them from the things that were trauma, forgetting that they were also the things that made us stronger. So I'm hoping that, this time around, it's like inoculating, getting our whatever it's called. You get a weakened state of the virus, and then that helps you not to have the virus.
Yeah.
We don't even let them get the weakened state of the virus. And then when the virus comes, they're just laying there. I don't know what to do. We got a pretty tough form of the virus, and it made us what we are.
As I look at my kids, I'm raising a 13-year-old, a 9-year-old, and what I'm seeing and what I'm asking myself is, how do I put them in a controlled environment for them to learn resilience? Resilience is the outcome of my hardship, of growing up in a harsh environment, but I am so grateful for that. There's this wealth of capacity that I built because of that. Now, with my son, I'm trying to strengthen him to be a better man when he's an adult. It's hard because you have to do it in an environment where everything is so easy. Everything they want, instant gratification. So it's interesting to navigate. But what I want to touch on, because this applies to the younger as well as to the older, is communication as a leadership infrastructure. Because I was at this conference recently, one of the strongest things that came out of that is how communication is no longer just a soft skill. It's really an infrastructure, because the systems are becoming more complex, and clarity sets the difference between momentum and burning out. When we talk about communication, it still feels underdeveloped as a leadership discipline, both for a kid, a 13-year-old, but also for an adult, a lawyer that's been in the trenches for quite a bit.
I think it goes back to the transition away from authoritarian structures and really learning how to communicate from within. And it's even down to our language. One of the things I've really been working on lately is, instead of saying things like my employees or these people who work for me, I'm always like my teammates. I've got about 12 or 13 countries right now on my team from different places in the world. A lot of the newer ones will be like, hey, sir. And I'm like, listen, it's just DM. Just call me Dennis or DM. That's what I prefer. I'm just a person like you. Yes, I'm a little higher on the org chart, but at the end of the day, we're all just people. So I think it is the transition, but also coupled with our fear of having hard conversations. And what ends up happening, and this is just what we've learned from history, if you don't have hard conversations, you're going to end up in an impossible situation. A lot of people see a problem going on in their company or with a particular individual, and instead of sitting down with them, say, okay, what's going on? What am I missing here? Is this something that we can work through, or is this person just gone beyond and we need to part ways? They sit back, and then all of a sudden that person has infected 12 other people, and then you've got this whole group of people that have now turned. I think that being a pastor helped me tremendously in learning how to lead businesses, because when you're a pastor, you can get up and rant and rave. In the last 20 years, the 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, everybody loved that. Some guy or girl would get up and just be like, you're the worst person on the planet. God's mad at you right now. You better get right. And everyone was just like, yeah, that's great. But that's what we were acclimated to. And we're like, oh, I love that. But time
I did not love that. I was like, that is so horrible. Like, why would you say that? You don't even know me.
But a lot of people do. That's what they got used to.
It's true. No, my parents, they want to hear that. Even now, they're like, why? It's like really reproach, like again and again. Have you not done anything good in your life?
Yeah. And then transitioning, because in my early 20s, I started traveling around a lot and speaking in other churches. And as I spoke in other churches, what I noticed was the ones who had kind, genuine, happy people were the ones that had softer pastors who spoke softer. Every message wasn't we're all going to die in 10 seconds and we better get things right or it's going to be over for us and we're going to be miserable forever.
Just wait for the afterlife. You don't get yourself right now.
So as I saw that, I was just like, wait a minute. I'm going to these churches with 30, 40 people where some guy, because in the churches I was in, very right wing, is getting up and just lambasting these people continuously. And then I'm going to these churches with 3, 4, 500, 2, 3,000 people. And the guy's getting up and he's just, great to have everybody here. Today we're going to talk about this. And let me encourage you.
There's also though a bit of a, like, there is a middle ground. This too much. But then there's also this tendency to fall all the way on this other side where it's all beautiful, all happiness and roses, and you're here and we welcome you just as you are. We don't expect anything of you. There's no accountability, no responsibility. You just be here. That is also where I feel like there's a bit of a washing down of what exactly we're talking about here, because I've seen both extremes, how they can all exist under the same roof sometimes even.
And I think that's where boundaries, accountability, and shared vision comes into play.
Yeah.
So inspiring through shared vision, and again, this could be in a business setting as well. You're inspiring through a shared vision. You're putting out clear boundaries so that when people fall outside of their boundaries, they know. And either they're going to no longer be a part of the vision or they're going to have to re-earn their way back into that shared vision. Yes, it's not all you're the worst and oh, you're the best. It's
right.
Hey, this is what we can do together with this clear direction, with these clear boundaries, with these clear areas of accountability.
Yeah.
And as we are accountable to one another for a shared goal, we together can accomplish something that alone, but even separate, wouldn't be able to accomplish. And let's be honest, people love to find a shared vision and to accomplish something together. I have never been a part of something where I have had a clear vision and I knew where I was going and I was able to communicate that vision in business, in a church setting, in a conversation where I've said, listen, this is where we're going. This is how we're going to get there. These are the boundaries we're going to work within. Here's how we're going to be accountable to these boundaries. And so let's have a good time and do it together, folks. That's where I've seen that balance between the two.
Absolutely. Talking about accountability, this was another signal that I was picking up, bringing AI into the conversation, because I'm sure it's changing a lot of things on your side of the business. AI is moving fast, right? But I think what I've seen a lot in the event industry, particularly because this is the space where I spend most of my time, is how the industry is moving and is shifting from just the curiosity level of what AI is to accountability. And the focus is turning from let's generate a bunch of content with AI. Professionals are more interested to take AI from just a funny video they're going to generate, a funny photo they're going to generate, like you see that on Facebook, to actually something strategic, helpful in the way we filter things. It's helpful in the way we sequence information with this layer of intelligence on top, how we can support real-time decision-making instead of just getting overwhelmed with a lot of data. In events, we deal with a lot of data. So from your perspective in the spaces that you work in and including your own business, how do you see leaders approaching AI adoption while preserving trust, authenticity, human judgment, all of that, the good stuff?
This era mirrors when the iPhone launched. Do you remember when the iPhone came out and it was like,
let me break it down to you, Dennis. To this point, I do not want an iPhone. I had an iPhone. I'm an Android user to the end of my life.
They were the first to go into smartphones. So we'll just use the word smartphone. The Razor wasn't a smartphone. It was a weapon that they used. Remember, they threw it like a ninja star in the commercials. So anytime they're using your phone as a ninja star, you probably don't have the best technology. But I remember when the iPhone came out or when smartphones came out, and all of a sudden, like there was all these like silly apps, right? You could use an app that would do like machine gun sounds or bodily function sounds. And just everybody had all these silly apps. But some people were going, wow, check out this calendar feature. I can have my email on here and it's not cumbersome. I can do business everywhere now. And AI is the same way. You got some people that are just like,
I'm just going to keep it at the level of like, how can we use this phone to generate more funny videos, farts, whatever?
And it's the same thing with AI. Some people, they're making these little videos and making babies and dogs dance. Listen, that's great. Meanwhile, I'm over here using Whisper Flow
vibe coding the shit
Yeah,
out of everything.
yeah. And so I think that as we're looking at what's happening with AI, there's nothing new under the sun. We've been through this before. When we got smartphones, websites, social media, every iteration has been the same sort of cycle. So, how do we deal with it? Look back and say, okay, who succeeded with smartphones? Who succeeded with websites? Who succeeded with social media? What are the things they did, and apply those same principles to the next thing? And this is just that next thing. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to encourage people that ask me, what should I be doing? Is just listen, it's not here to replace you, it's to make you better. If your post consists of ChatGPT, give me a LinkedIn post, and you just throw it up there, you're using it wrong. But if you're sitting there and what usually takes you 2 hours to
Yeah,
work out a good post now takes you a half hour, but it
100%.
delivers the same quality, now you're using it correctly. And so that's what I would say to that.
Events Demystified, the podcast for event professionals.
Love that. Now, there's obviously this undercurrent happening at the same time with this onslaught of a generation of content of all kinds. There's so much everywhere, and how much that demands from our cognitive load and demands from leadership as well. And I think we talk a lot about motivation, but very rarely do we talk about capacity. I'm all about capacity. Like, how do I increase my capacity? All about growth. How do I grow? Even right now, as we're talking, I am training for an Ironman for the first time. And I know that swimming is not my thing. I hate swimming. I am not good at swimming, but this is the one place where I know I can grow the most.
Mhm.
And I know that by the time I'm done with this Ironman, if anything, I'm just going to be the best swimmer I would ever be able to be in my lifetime. So
Mhm.
that's good enough for me. That's where the standard is, because I know that's never been something that I've spent any time in. I've been in bodybuilding competitions, I've won bodybuilding competitions, but swimming was just never on my mind. And putting myself to the uncomfortable stages of being new and totally rookie at something, it's not fun. I have some really good days in the pool and some really bad days in the pool. I want to just be like, no, I don't want to do this. Why am I putting myself through this? But I think that's where there's the ability to increase your capacity. That's where, going back to what we we're talking about, resilience. How do you personally stay grounded and increase your capacity as you're guiding others through complexity and changes?
It is a relentless pursuit of cleaning my schedule and my calendar. I'm always with I have a VA right now. I'm actually getting ready to upgrade somebody US based with an executive background just because my schedule has gotten that way. A lot of that is because I find myself looking at my day, my week, and going, okay, not like, how do I do this, but who should be doing this?
Yeah.
Is this a me thing? One of the things I
Mhm.
really teach in my company, and so we use AI. We actually have two young men who their full-time job is AI implementation, learning, automations, all of that stuff within the company. But I always tell my team, I want you doing the things that only you can do. If you are a director and you're spending 3 hours a week on a spreadsheet that could be done by a VA, and I find out about it, we're going to sit down and have a discussion. Because if the VA can do it, then you can be doing the task that you should be doing, customer forward, whatever it is. People will come to me from a department and say, I think we need to hire another person. I'll go, let's just sit down and do your workflow. And then I'll find like 10, 15 hours a week completely wasted. They're like, told me I had to go to all those meetings. And I'm like, could you just read the AI notes afterwards? And
Extract the key takeaways. Yeah.
how much talking do you do in these meetings? Oh, I don't do any. I just sit there. And I'm like, you're not in that meeting anymore. So I think that constant, relentless pursuit of optimization of your own personal flow. My flow is now ideas. My flow is now communication. My flow is now big picture. So anything that falls outside of that immediate flow, I examine it and I go, should this be here? And if it shouldn't, I set it to the person or the automation or the system or whatever it is. So, what AI enables us to do is hone ourselves down to laser focus. most CEOs, most people who are in some sort of leadership position, they shoot with a fire hose. And it's not nearly as effective as if they were shooting with laser. And so I'm always looking to get things down to that laser. Am I doing the 3 to 4 things only I can do for the company?
I think because a lot of leaders are just trying to keep up with everything, as you said, right? Optimization. I love that word. My word for the year is optimization, not just from a workflow point of view, but mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, even all of those things are important, and they're important to me. I think a lot of leaders, the way I see them is they're trying to keep up with stuff instead of trying to redesign how decisions are getting made. And they're very much into this reactive capacity, especially as the complexity of systems, of workflows, automation, augmentation, AI agents, all the things layer on top of them. What does it look like to lead change without constantly reacting to it? As you're talking to those leaders that you're coaching, what are some of the things that you found from your own experience that is applicable to that?
So what I've done, and this has helped me tremendously, is I have 8 directors over the 8 different parts of my company. Each one of those directors, I just call up sandbox with. And like my one Q, he's head of AI. We talk about AI back and forth pretty much constantly. And if he wants to hit me in the evening, he can. Sometimes I create boundaries. Hey, I'm with my wife tonight, can't really chat. I do a roundtable every week where I take 15 minutes per director, 10 where they talk, 5 where they take questions from other people, and we go around with each one of them. And so I'll be like, oh, hey, Q, and check out this pro. Have you checked this out? No, I haven't yet. Okay, go check it out. Tell me what you think about it. Oh, it's really cool. I think we could use it for this and this. Okay, now go ahead and do a test on it. Show me what it looks like. Show me how it works. Okay, great. Boom. So I got 15 hours of work done with 3 sentences. And then I go to my marketing person, Rochelle, same thing. I'm a marketing geek. And so I'm like, hey, I think we should do a series of videos on this. So what do you think about this? And we've got this channel. She'll come in. I'm like, all right, do this and this. When you need me here to shoot this, here's the best way to do it. We're executing. Sod fulfillment, Cassie CS, Carrie production. I could go on across all of my team where I'm having these constant decisions where 85% to 90%.
It's delegation, right?
85 to 90% of what's happening with me thinking through things is being done by them and with them. Eventually, what I'm able to do is go, okay, I know that person thinks the way I do. I can trust their decision every time. I always say, what would you do? And I'm like, now here's why I would do this instead. And here's why I'm doing this instead. I explain the process, what they maybe didn't think about and the ramifications. But I have 2 or 3 of my directors that are like, I never get to spend time with you. And I'm like, that's a compliment. It's me saying, I don't even have to worry about you. I said, now, if you want to once a month, just coffee talk, I'm happy for it. But you don't need me to make your decisions. And so that's what I've been able to do. But that's how I'm able to execute at scale, is having those people and then one by one kind of stepping away. I don't really need a lot from Sod. I don't really need a lot from Carrie. I don't really need a lot from Jenny. Marketing, CS, and sales are the only things that really need consistently my time.
If you're someone that tends to micromanage, you should stop doing that. And find the systems that work in which you do trust the people that you hired. Hopefully that's why you hired them. They're on your team. I wanted to touch on one other thing before we're coming to a wrap up here, because you are very much in marketing, content development, and AI is making content easier to generate for better or worse, which means that also the bar for credibility is rising. So from your perspective, as you're thinking about defining authority and trust in the next era of leadership, what does that look like?
I think it looks like transparency. When you try to fool people, even if you fool some, there's some you don't, and that erodes trust. So for me, one of the things I do, LinkedIn's been my playground the last year, because I was just like, let me throw some time at LinkedIn. I did real well on Facebook. I did real well on Instagram, made money out of them, built agencies out of them, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, LinkedIn, I don't know. I don't like this kind of stuffy, but I'll try it. I'll just be me on here. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see, like, I'm definitely myself on there.
Oh, for sure. Hey, this person, people already know who this person is. Yeah. I don't have a second face. I don't want to have a second face. This is what you get. And I think, like you said, it goes back to authenticity, transparency, and just being yourself.
I have videos that come from my team that are cuts from my podcasts. I did 99 podcasts last year.
I'm on route to do 50 this year because that's my bandwidth.
It's just guest spots. I also have a weekly
podcast. So you're
I
counting
did
your
99
podcast. Wait,
guest
then I have to
podcasts.
my podcast in too.
Last year, I was going to do 100 podcast guest spots. And that was just because my speaking style is give me 30 minutes, no one say a word, and I'll entertain the heck out of you. That works, but not really on podcasting. It's a give and take. So I was trying to learn to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'd like to feel like I've gotten better with it through the year.
That's
One of the things that I pull from these podcasts is what I was going to say. So we put a lot of videos out because of that. But a lot of times I'll jump in at the coffee shop or I'll just put something in my phone notes and I'll post something later. When I post it, I put at the bottom, certified organic. I wrote this, no help with any sort of AI. I humanize it. So they know if they click more, they go, oh, his team wrote that. I record everything, all my meetings, all my internal meetings, all my trainings, obviously my podcasts. And I have a daily email newsletter that goes to 55,000 attorneys. I have 4 internal brands plus my personal brand that we post 3 times a day. I have a biweekly email newsletter that goes out through LinkedIn. I could sit here and name all these different things that I have going
you're
out.
the kind of person like me that has 6 LinkedIn pages, 10 Instagrams, I don't know how many TikToks, and I don't know how many Twitters and Facebook pages. All of that gets content that is very much generated for that channel.
Correct. But what I do is it's just all recorded. And then I have 2 in my writing team and 3 in my marketing team, and they just put together content and write emails out of it. I couldn't have written it better myself. They create content from my philosophies, but it's just me being me. And that's where I really encourage people, life flow. And this goes back to Gary Vee.
Yeah.
Gary Vee used to be like, you just get a video camera and they follow you around everywhere and then cut it up. He said that 8 years ago. So I'm not like claiming Content Stack as like I'm this originator. But for me, I met with 2 of my interns are coming on the end of their 3-month internship. And I was like, hey guys, any questions you have? And they asked me about marketing. They asked me about the company. They asked me about this. It was all recorded. And I was like, hey, Rochelle, there's some good stuff in there. Just take it.
You have transcripts,
Exactly.
blogs, articles. I honestly, Dennis, I love that. I have a whole team of people that do certain things. I have 2 VAs that work on the podcast, on my personal business, but I also have agentic AI that's built on as a layer on top of that. Like, I totally get what you're saying, because otherwise there is no way I would be working at the level and capacity. And a lot of people ask me all the time, it's like, how do you do all the things that you do? I run several businesses. I produce podcasts, I bodybuild, and I train for a competition and an Ironman, and I have a family and travel a lot and speak a lot. That means capacity to me. That means systems. That means workflows. That means supporting yourself with what is necessary to make that happen. Now, the question becomes, there's somebody out there thinking, I don't want to do all of that. That's just listening to it sounds a lot. I barely go on LinkedIn once a month to post something. How do you overcome the person that is just so camera shy, so content shy? So like, I don't have anything to say. That's the person that I feel like they do have things to say, but they can't get past themselves.
So what we do, because we have a lot of this issue with our client base, which is attorneys, right? Especially my target is 1 to 10s, because I don't want to do 4 committees and then somebody gets fired and I lose my contract. I want Bob Jones, attorney at law, Charleston, South Carolina, does criminal, and he works with me because Bob Jones isn't going anywhere for a while, right? So what we try to do is emulate something that they're already comfortable with. We provide a host for their podcast when they shoot with us. We ask them 7 to 10 questions based on who their client is. We send them the questions a week ahead. Then they sit down at their desk with their camera, a little $200-$300 mic in front of them. Our host is like, hey, Bob, good to have you again. They become friends with the host. And it's just like they're doing a Zoom chat with a friend. So we try to remove as little friction as possible. And it's the same thing with myself. All my content, it comes from a place of no friction. It's just me being me. If you want to create content, don't feel like you have to have this certain setup to do it. Just capture you being you and build off of that. You'll be surprised at how much confidence gets built when you realize something you said to one of your teammates that you had permission to record, that you were just talking about working with certain types of clients, gets made into a piece of content, and then it gets placed in 2 or 3 places. And the people are just like, this is great. And then you're all of a sudden you're like, maybe I'm not as dumb as I thought I probably might be. But that's how you build that
Yeah.
confidence. Do it in a frictionless way that's natural for you, that can then be utilized in different ways. That's
Yeah.
how I would answer it.
I love that. And going back to podcasting, and we both have podcasts. And I feel like for someone that especially is new at speaking, I advise them start your own podcast. Like
Mhm.
that is the best avenue that I personally use to get over this internal monologue that I had going on about how I'm speaking with an accent and who wants to hear someone speaking with an accent, and I'm translating sometimes from Romanian to English, which means there's a lot of filler words in there. That's cringe to me listening back to what I have to say. All of that is a lot of the stuff that was going on prior to starting my own podcast, getting out there and getting more comfortable before I even stepped foot on stage for the first time. I don't know if that works with your audience, but I see that there's a lot of comfortableness that can be built that way.
Yeah, it's building resilience. One thing I remind myself and I tell my attorneys, I ask a very simple question. Have you ever said something to somebody in your office, a client, maybe a friend or a family member, that you visibly saw comforted them, taught them, or helped them in some way? And almost everybody will be like, yeah, I have. In my opinion, for you to hold that piece of knowledge means that there's dozens, hundreds, thousands, or maybe even millions who you are not giving that to that need it. And so to me, I remind myself of that, not because I think I have such brilliance to share with the world, but I know I've helped encourage people before. And if some goofy, chubby guy on an island in Belize can help people, then let me help people. And if some people are going to think I'm obnoxious and loud, they're going to think I'm obnoxious either way. But I know that there are people through my life for 20 plus years, almost 30 years now. There are still people from when I was 18, 19, 20 that stay in contact with me, even though I'm no longer a preacher, no longer in church, that say, you helped me, you changed my life. And I have people today that will email me from emails that we put out or podcasts that say, that really resonated with me. Thank you. Now I also get, unsubscribe, I hate you. Why? But that's okay. That keeps me humble. It's more just, hey, I'm going to say it. And if it helps you, great.
My Romanian spark had to learn first and foremost how to use AI to reply to such emails in a very polite manner and not use my first fiery response. As we're coming to a close, Dennis, and this was such a wonderful conversation that I enjoyed a lot personally. Here, we talk a lot about Fit for Events. That's actually a framework that I came up with after 2020. And it's embedding a mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual pillars into the well-being of who we are. Not necessarily as a lifestyle trend. There's so much talk about wellness trends, right? But really as a leadership requirement, as a capacity builder. So let me turn that question to you then. What helps you stay fit for leadership and meaningful conversations as you go through life?
My therapist, my couples therapist, because we do a lot of what I call preemptive therapy.
Nice.
So we try to stay on top of it. And then I am constantly in therapy, have been for about 10 years. So my therapist, my psychiatrist, and my business coach. That's what helps me. I understand that I can't do it alone. I've been thinking of putting together a series entitled, It Takes a Village to Raise an Entrepreneur. And just talk about all the people in my life, my wife, my sister, some friends, people that I pay that do different things, all the people that work on my team, like all of these different people that if it were not for these people, there would be no Dennis Meador as you see it. And so to me, I acknowledge that I am the cumulative efforts of other people that have believed enough in me to either stand by my side, support me, or even at other times prop me up. So that is what keeps me going and how I stay fit to lead, because I understand it's not just me. There's a lot of people that support me to do this.
I love that coming from a man that recognizes he needs that kind of support is really powerful. Was there a time in your life where you felt like you needed to seek that? How did you come to that conclusion? Because that's not an easy thing for a man to say,
Oh.
hey, I think I need to go and have a conversation with my therapist.
From 18 to 36, I believed every moment must be monetized. I was a full-time pastor. I had one or two businesses. I had groups in my community. I had my children that I was raising. I wouldn't watch TV unless it was beneficial. I was nonstop every moment, every day until 36. and I had a nervous breakdown. I spent a year and a half in bed. I was able to work 1 to 2 afternoons a week and still support my family. But I spent a year and a half in bed thinking I had MS like my father. I went to a neurologist to see if my nerve endings were frayed. The neurologist was so kind and gentle in how he said this. He said, "You have what we call successful man syndrome." And I was like,
what is that?
and then he described, and I go, "You're just saying I had a nervous breakdown, aren't you?" And he's, "Yeah, I wanted to give it to you a little gently." I went to my psychiatrist like a week later, started taking the proper medicine. And within just a few days, it was like I woke up from a nightmare. And I'm not going to say I've never missed my meds, but I've never gone off my meds on purpose. I've continued to stay in and out of therapy under the watchful eye of a psychiatrist. I fried my own nervous system. It's my own fault. But I don't want to be that same guy lying in bed crying for 3 days at a time and having diminished mental capacity where I can't even form a sentence. I've lived by my words since I was a small child. That's how I've survived. That's how I've hustled. When you took that away from me, I was just like, I can't ever be this again. And so from that moment about 12 years ago, I've just continued to work, and I'm still working through a lot of stuff.
The realization that it wasn't just a mental burnout, it was burnout. Is it an elevated version of burnout? Because that's almost what it sounds like.
It's successful man syndrome, and that's what I choose to believe.
So your LinkedIn tagline is suffering from successful man
syndrome.
I'm glad that you took the measure necessary to get after your well-being and to become the version of yourself that you enjoy being. And I'm sure that has really paid out dividends in the last 12 years, as you said. Now, as we come to a close here, you mentioned Facebook, Instagram, a bunch of social media, and LinkedIn. But where would you like our audience to connect with you, Dennis?
LinkedIn, that's my playground now. Facebook is for the old people here on the island. They're all over 50. So I put my silly stuff on there. And then when I go around the island, they're like, "Hey, DM, that was funny the other day, what you said about your wife." So that's Facebook. You can connect with my brands, but if you actually want to connect with me, LinkedIn's the place to do it. Instagram is for my Austin friends because they're all millennials. And so I'll bump in there and put something. And they're like, "Oh, hey, cool. How are you?" So I got these little groups of friends.
Everybody's freaking out in Texas and you're like shoeless on the beach.
So LinkedIn, Dennis, DM Meador, just Dennis Meador. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes. That's the best place to connect with me individually. If you're interested in what we do, it's turnkey podcasting. Basically, we create the brand, we create the content. All our clients do is show up. We provide a host. They answer 7 to 10 questions in about 20 minutes. That 30-minute session becomes a month's worth of marketing that's authentic to them that we actually distribute. We actually do all the marketing with it. We do website content. We're getting ready to launch 2 TV streaming channels so you could watch it on your home TV. We're also launching a guest matching service. If you work with us, you don't work with us on your podcast production and then you go get your guests somewhere else and then you go do your social media through another company. We want to provide one big ecosystem. For ease of use, when we're all one big ecosystem, we're sharing instead of hundreds, we're now sharing tens, if not hundreds of thousands of connections together to reach people.
I love that. Dennis, thank you so much for such a thoughtful conversation. I feel like if there's one thing that's really clear is how leadership is being redefined in real time and how leaders who will last are the ones who are designing for human capacity, clarity, leading the conversation with intention, as you mentioned. And all of that is so important in this age that we live in. Yes, it might be something similar to the iPhone, but I feel like it's moving so much faster at a pace that a lot of people struggle to stay up to date with. All of that aside, this was a wonderful time, and I'm really appreciating your time, putting away schedule and the busy schedule that you're managing or your VAs are managing, and just sitting down with me and having this conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, stay calm, stay human, and stay fit for events. See you on the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning into the CEO edition of the Events Demystified podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Tree Fan Events Production. We don't just produce events, we power them with AV, AI, and a strategy. From bespoke AV production planning and management to AI workshops, courses, and keynotes, we help teams build smarter events and stronger businesses. Learn more at treefanevents.com.